This week on the soon-to-be extinct Star Trek Discovery, the crew did something the writers of the show have never done. They visited a library. What would happen when Book came into contact with real books? Well, I tell you, if you give me a chance! Space. A continuous extension interval between planets, stars and other objects. These are the critiques of the critic McElvoy. His continuing mission to review strange new shows, to seek out new work and new bastardizations, to boldly note what no critic has noted before. Cheers. This week's episode of Critic's Log is sponsored by Diet Coke. Just for the taste of it. I love its sugary substitute like goodness. So, Episode 8, Season 5, Labyrinths. No, not a sequel to the movie Labyrinth, the David Bowie extravaganza of yesteryear, though there were references to it in this episode. There was a oubliette joke. Yeah. Wasn't expecting that.
She's in the oubliette.
Shut up!
Is it a shock that the writers of Star Trek Discovery are fans of Labyrinth? It's a bit of a camp children's classic. Not one of them can be over 45 years old, so no, not really. It's within their wheelhouse of cultural references, I would say. Yours too, and mine. But, you know, I've looked at other things as well. So, I'm going to shock you.
Well, love.
This wasn't a bad episode. Listen, no. This isn't a prelude to a joke. I mean it. I'm not messing with you. It was all right. It had lots of interesting elements. It had a mystery in a celestial library. Okay, we've seen things like that before, notably in Doctor Who, but, you know, libraries are interesting. Spacebound libraries are interesting, even if those libraries mystifyingly are in the heart of an ion storm. Why you'd put a universal archive in the middle of the Badlands, the Alpha Quadrant's worst ongoing ion storm, which is highly dangerous to shipping? I don't know, as a form of protection maybe? Well, as this episode brutally illustrated, it's not much protection, not if you've got a big enough ship. It took the Breen, 3 minutes to get through? So why put the library? Anyway, we'll come back to that. That doesn't matter now. I'm trying to praise this thing. The writers, they make it so easy, don't they? They make it so easy to get distracted. So it had various elements which made it interesting. It had a mystery inside a library. Mick had a sort of inner light experience. She opened a Betazoid book and entered a mindscape or a mind maze that she had to solve. Book, who had joined her in the library on the very flimsy pretext that there was an artifact from his world in it. You'll remember his world was destroyed in the 4th season. Appeared inside Mick's mind as a sort of part of the psychic program to help her through, tell her what to do. Book, I suppose, was the kind of Bowie to her Jennifer Connelly. But there was no ball play here. There were no snakes. There was no singing. It's not Japanese, Sarah. None of that. You have 3 hours to solve my labyrinth. None of that. Sounds more like fucking Matt Berry than David Bowie, doesn't it? It doesn't matter. Anyway. I used to be able to do a pretty good David Bowie impression, you know, but then my balls dropped. So, there was tension in the library. And there was tension outside. Moll, of Moll and Locke fame, was furious that Locke had died. And she promised the Primarch, the insane subordinate but would be king of the Breen that survived, that, you know, they could bring the Scion, they could bring Locke back to life with the progenitor's tech if they got it first. And therefore the rightful succession could occur. And even though the Primarch wanted to be the head of the Breen himself, again another little plot detail, he sort of went along with it. I don't know, out of duty, tradition, honour, I don't know. But it meant that there was a little bit of a succession drama going on the Breen ship. A sort of, I want to say Shakespearean succession drama, but it wasn't quite that sophisticated, you understand. But there was something going on that ship that was intriguing and compelling psychologically. Remember, as we discussed on a previous log, Moll and Mick are mirrors. Mirror images of one another. So they're both 2 badass girls in charge of their respective spheres of interest. Mick leading her group in the search for the thing, and Moll leading hers as she tries to get it first. Mick has Book to drive her, if you like, or to be there for her, to help her, to make her see the light. Moll is driven by Locke. Mick and Book, Moll and Locke. So you had the drama inside the library, you had the Breen drama outside the library. There was a ticking clock aspect to the episode which gave it a bit of momentum. And I have to say it was fairly intriguing and quite tight. And even periodically exciting. Highly uncharacteristic of Star Trek Discovery. Where's the flab, you say? Where's the long pauses? Where's the 1,000-yard stares? Where's Tilly? Well, Tilly was there, but thankfully relegated to the background, even though Mick called for her. Tilly, I wish Tilly was here. Well, she wasn't. She was on the bridge, working for a change. So this was all fine. So it had the structure and the momentum of a good self-contained episode. Very high stakes, a formidable enemy, an interesting alien succession drama going on, and a nice little puzzle for Mick to solve inside the space library to get the clue that would allow everybody to find the progenitor's tech. Fine, you say, but you're waiting to hear it, aren't you? I can tell you're waiting for me to say, but. Well, there is a but. The episode hinged once again on this idea that the scientist that left behind the breadcrumb trail that would lead to the progenitor's technology had designed a set of tests that only a good and virtuous person could solve. Now, you'll recall when we discussed this before, we said that this was potentially a problem. Because how could one design such a test? How could anyone be certain that someone who solved a puzzle would be a good person? Surely they just have to be laterally minded, intelligent, maybe intelligent enough to put themselves in the mind of a virtuous person and empathise with that person, or at least be able to read the actions of a virtuous individual. But that doesn't mean to say they're whiter than white themselves. And even if they were virtuous when they passed the test, what's to stop them being corrupted by that power? Now, believe it or not, Discovery's writers had thought about this a little bit. Mick, spoilers, passed the test. Not by doing anything action orientated or by indeed finding anything. All that happened was she walked around the maze and, realised that time was running out and contemplated the futility of her position. She realised that she was fallible, human, that she'd made mistakes, and she reflected on the things that drove her, namely fear, she said. And the program's guide that had taken on the form of book said, you've passed because what you've demonstrated is self-awareness, the ability to understand your own flaws. You are a fully rounded, self-aware individual, and therefore I confer upon you the status of righteous being. I say you are a good person. And of course, superficially, this is a very seductive argument, isn't it? If we have self-awareness, we are good. But are we? Are we critics loggers? I consider myself quite self-aware. Not self-aware enough not to be doing this, not humiliating myself every week for your cheap fucking entertainment. But I'm fairly self-aware, I'd like to believe. I'd like to think that I understand what's good about my personality and what's bad. I know you're thinking, bad, what? Yeah, I've got my flaws too, Not as many as you, but I've got a few. The ability to understand where you've gone wrong in life, the people that you've hurt, the people who've hurt you. How did they get in that position? Why did you put yourself in that position? Are you completely blame-free in every situation where a relationship's broken down with another individual? How culpable are you? Or was it inevitable? Were there other factors involved? All of these questions are extremely important in life, I think. But it is perfectly possible to be an intelligent, mindful individual who can reflect deeply on their own life and their own flaws and still act like a complete and utter bastard. Sometimes we can't help it, can we? Sometimes we just keep reoffending. We're natural recidivists, if you will. And even if you won't. So that, for me, was the flaw in the episode? You may disagree. You may say that Mick's done enough to prove that she won't be corrupted with the greatest power the universe has ever seen. It's just a pity we'll never find out, because of course at the very point that she's going to obtain this technology, the show will be over. We're not going to see season 6 where Mick has a god complex. Now I can create entire civilizations. We're never going to see that, are we? We're never going to see the Discovery crew sent to kill Mick because she's gone rogue. Wouldn't that be great? And even if we do see Mick again, saying Starfleet Academy, presumably she's going to be wise and look back on her time on the Discovery whimsically and talk about the progenitor tech as something which was so big that no one could have ever used it. I'm going to call it right now, kids. I'm sure you called it back in episode 1 because you're way ahead of the game. The progenitor tech is never going to be used, is it? It's going to be the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Mick's going to say to Starfleet Intelligence in the final episode, well, what's happened to it? Where is it? What are you doing with it? Don't worry, Captain Burnham. It's been worked on by top men.
Who? Top men.
Then we're going to have that scene, aren't we, where it's put in a space box and wheeled into the furthest recess of Starfleet's giant warehouse somewhere. Probably in San Francisco. Never to be found again. It's too big for any one power to yield. Or wield, or wield and yield. I suppose you'd yield if you were to wield such power at somebody. Perhaps the Breen would yield. None of that matters now. So, a good episode on its face. It left us with some intriguing threads. Mole killed the Primarch and convinced the rest of the Breen faction to follow her to revive their true leader. Mole is, you might say, intensely motivated to get to the progenitor tech first. The Breen know where they're going because Mick was forced to hand over the completed star map with all the pieces in place to them. But they scanned it first, didn't they, those sneaky Discovery people? And they spore drived out of there while discharging their nacelles to do a sort of Picard manoeuvre where it appears to the other ship you've been destroyed, but actually you've warped away. So the Discovery enter episode 9 with a 5-hour head start on their Breen rivals and everything to play for in the ready money round. It could be an exciting climax. It could be. I'm willing to grant that. But it's all going to hinge, isn't it, on what the progenitor tech actually is when they find it. What it is, what it does, and how it's handled. And I don't know, to those who say, well, it was another episode where most of the crew had very little to do. Yes, true. Mole, a character that's only been around this season, is already more memorable and more central to the action than half the Discovery cast, but that's the nature of the beast, ladies and genitals. This was never a show designed to be an ensemble like TNG or DS9 or Voyager. The people who write this stuff just weren't into that approach. If you want a kind of watered down version of that, watch Strange New Worlds. or don't. And on that note, as we bound carelessly with wild abandon into the home straight of this season of Star Trek Discovery, the final season, it's time for anomalous readings. This was another episode where the word shit was mentioned a lot. Holy shit! Shit! Why do they keep doing it? It's the only substantial swear word that reoccurs in every single episode. I know I keep going on about this, but I have to believe that either it's an inside joke or there's something very Freudian going on here. History will decide. We talked about why the archive was hidden inside the Badlands. I say hidden. It wasn't hidden. Everybody knew it was there. Half the galaxy had contributed to it, including the Breen. Why put it in the middle of an iron storm? Do you know? The whole point of the Badlands was it was somewhere you weren't supposed to go. It was called the Badlands because it was dangerous. The archivist had a good line. She said to Book, who joined her, how fun to have a book visit me for a change. Which implied that she visited books, but she doesn't visit them so much as work with them. Semantics. It's too late in this show for such petty nitpicking, isn't it? There was a curious insult. I think Rayner called the Breen gelatinous assholes. Gelatinous? That's what I heard. Did you hear different? They're not gelatinous. They're humanoid with skeletons and things. What's that about? They let Book take the only remaining artifact from his world from the archive. I found this very curious. It's like me walking, several hundred years from now into the Great Space Museum in orbit around the Earth and plucking the last object from a ruined Britain, which happens to be a can of Diet Coke. That's it. That's all that's left of our civilization. Isn't that awful? Now, 1,000 years from now, this will be priceless. How likely is it that the curator of the space library in orbit around the Earth is going to let me take this out there? Unlikely, I'd say. But no, she just said, "Oh, take your thing, but do let us know what you did with it." Well, what if he used it for sexual pleasure? What if he rammed it up his rectum? Did generations have to read about that? And if you're going to do that, get John Barrowman on the show at least. Make it official.
Hey, not too close. We're in HD, okay?
So that's it for this week. We'll be back next week with the penultimate episode of Star Trek Discovery. Can you believe it? It's nearly over. My God, Space Kids, how far we've come. Presumably the Breen and Mick will both find the tech around the same time and they'll have to fight for it. I know who I'm backing, and it's not Mick. Until next time, bye.